Hi, I'm Michelle Fakos, an internationally renowned and award-winning expert on Scandinavian art. I've been lecturing and writing on this topic for decades, and am both an American and a Swedish citizen living part-time in Stockholm. I'm excited to share with you my research, gleaned from books, journals, letters, and conversations with other experts. I know how hard it is to find out about Nordic art because I had to learn to read Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, and German to do it. Are you with me? Then let's get started. National Romanticism was a Europe-wide movement whose purpose was to construct generic national identities that encouraged patriotism and social solidarity. National identity highlights the singular characteristics of a nation, the qualities that distinguish it from its neighbors. But it can also include fundamental geographical and climatic conditions or cultural elements such as food, language, music, and religion that, while part of one nation's experience, might also be shared by its neighbors. Until World War II, Finland was a sparsely populated, densely forested, and desperately poor land. At least the Finnish-speaking part, colored here red on the map. Swedes colonized the parts in yellow and established their capital on the west coast in Turku. Because Finland's bureaucracy and intellectual class consisted almost solely of Swedish speakers, there was little incentive for nurturing a Finnish national identity before 1809, when Sweden was forced to cede its Finnish colony to Russia at the conclusion of a centuries-long territorial dispute. Aware of efforts in Denmark, Germany, and Sweden to document peasant cultures whose ways of life were being eroded by industrialization and globalization, Finns joined the effort to document and preserve their own native traditions and landscape. In the 19th century, peasant life represented a crucial link to the past, both personal and collective. Unlike their Nordic neighbors, where literacy had been enforced since the 17th century so that citizens could read the Bible on their own, most Finnish peasants were illiterate. Until the advent of compulsory elementary education in the 1860s, Finns learned about their past through epic poetry recited by itinerant rune singers, who traveled to villages and farms to recount tales of heroism and suffering from the Finns' prehistoric past. Some, like Pentti Lytinen, seen here in a painting by Robert Ekman, became famous. In fact, Lytinen was Finland's first published peasant poet and a member of the patriotic Finnish Literary Society, established in 1831. This organization, along with the university, relocated from Turku to Helsinki following a devastating fire in 1828, formed the epicenter of the Finnish independence movement. The single most important contribution to the formation of a Finnish national identity was made by Elias Lönnrot, an amateur linguist and folklorist born in the tiny village of Paltaniemi in central Finland. A district doctor in eastern Finland by profession, Lönnrot was inspired by the Grimm brothers in Germany to travel the eastern Finnish wilderness of Karelia, beginning in the 1820s, in order to collect and record oral myths and legends. He wove them into a narrative poem, a national epic he called Kalevala, which means Land of Heroes. First published in 1835, it served as the main source of inspiration for Finnish national romantic artists, composers, and writers. In fact, Finns often refer to Finnish national romanticism as Karelianism. Kalevala is a huge, complex, and fantastic story that begins with the creation of the earth and continues past the arrival of Christianity in the 12th century. As in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, many of the stories revolve around a mysterious metal object, the Sampo, whose magical powers allegedly bring good luck to its possessor, but death and destruction in the process of trying to obtain it. There are several key heroes over the course of time. Wainamoinen, the shamanistic hero and first man. The smith Ilmarinen, who created the dome of the sky and the Sampo. Lemminkainen and Youkahainen, reckless youths in search of brides. And finally, Kullervo, an abused slave boy who eventually commits suicide. Although overwhelmingly tragic, it provided a venerable national epic that instilled national pride. Like the Song of Roland in France or the Nibelungenlied in Germany. And the influence of Kalevala continued long after Finland gained independence in 1917, as evidenced by its presence in the virally popular multiplayer third-person shooter game Warframe, which debuted in 2013. When the University of Helsinki opened in 1828, the era of nation building began, led by Finnish artists, bureaucrats, and intellectuals. Johan Ludvig Runeberg, a Swedish-speaking Finn, wrote the patriotic poem Our Land, which was first set to music and performed in 1848 and became the Finnish national anthem. Because Finland had no art academy, aspiring artists studied elsewhere. Robert Ekman studied at the Royal Academy in Stockholm, and Adolf von Becker, who began his studies at the Finnish Art Society Drawing School, founded in 1848, continued his studies at the Royal Academy in Copenhagen and later in Paris and Dusseldorf. Although their subjects were patriotic and ethnographically correct, they painted in the continental style taught at all European art academies, a curriculum based on the French system established in the late 17th century under Louis XIV. For the generation of National Romantic Finnish painters who came of age in the 1870s and later, celebrations of Finland's mythic past and heroic peasants were not enough. They wanted to develop independent artistic styles that were uniquely Finnish. This impulse was triggered by the success of Albert Edelfelt's 1879 painting, Child's Funeral, at the prestigious annual Salon exhibition in Paris in 1880. His painting won the only medal awarded to a foreigner that year and the first ever awarded to a Finnish painter. Finnish critics praised the exotic Finnishness of the scene. They marveled at the watery wilderness landscape and the rugged features and unusual dress of the figures. Finland was a notoriously harsh and poverty-stricken land, and rowing the tiny coffin to the cemetery across the lake on an overcast summer day epitomized to French audiences the Finns' humble and admirable acceptance of their inhospitable environment. Instead of embarrassment by their long history of subsistence living in a harsh land where the soil was poor, Finns developed pride in their ingenuity and the resourcefulness of their ancestors. Honest, straightforward oil paintings of peasant life realities instilled a sense of national self-esteem. Collectors, newly affluent through entrepreneurship, admired diligence, honesty, camaraderie, and ingenuity, and liked paintings such as these, partly because it was their heritage, and partly because it was those qualities that made them rich. Devoted to the idea of authenticity and identity, National Romantic painters focused on subjects they knew and loved best, and were conscious about following their inner voices when it came to style, rather than imitating the visual languages of other artists. Pekka Halonen, feeling homesick in Paris, painted the portrait of a blind kantele player. The kantele, which Halonen also played, is a five-stringed zither unique to Finland that often accompanied the recitations of ruin singers. The artist suggests here the power of music to transport listeners through their imaginations to cherished memories of home and to spiritual connection with their ancestral past. Hugo Simbari normalized death in this painting, where a personification of death is in no hurry to collect the dying woman lying on a cot in this small cabin. He stops to enjoy the folk melody played by the boy to comfort his elderly relative in her final moments. Death here exhibits the admirable qualities of compassion and acceptance found among Finnish peasants. These three souls, the dead, the dying, and the creative, energetic youth, unite here in the psycho-emotional space of music. Outdoors, nature provides a symphony, but indoors, it's up to this earnest youth. With a population density today of 19 people per square kilometer, half that of the US, nature and wilderness are ever present and close at hand. Today, more than half of Finns own cabins, which are often situated far from civilization. There they retreat at least annually in the summer to metaphorically recharge their batteries. Indeed, most Finns feel a kind of symbiotic, biomystical connection with nature. National Romantic painters celebrated this, too. When non-Finnish viewers look at Gallenkalala's great black woodpecker, they likely see little more than virgin forest and one of its avian inhabitants. Finns, however, recognize this geography as Karelia, the disputed and multi-ethnic region on the Russian border, where Lutheran Finns, Christian Orthodox Russians, and native reindeer-herding Sami have cohabitated more or less peacefully for centuries. They would also recognize the great black woodpecker as a species endangered by deforestation, fueled by a thriving lumber business. In this peaceful scene painted from the viewpoint of a fellow bird high up in the trees, the artist signaled to fellow Finns the modern problems they face: ecological, economic, and political. By painting a decorative frame of his own design, Gallenkalala emphasized the fact that this was not an actual view, but rather the result of human creativity, suggesting viewers should do some thinking about the painting's message and not just embrace it as a typical scene in the Karelian wilderness. The border he created echoes the traditional designs of Finnish textile and wood handicraft. In 1917, Karelianism's dream of obtaining national sovereignty was realized when Vladimir Lenin's newly formed Soviet government accepted Finland's declaration of independence. The group effort required to make this possible is captured in the sketch Gallenkalala made for his painting Problem. Here we see four nationalists, the artist himself, and three composers, Oskar Marikanto, Robert Kajenus, and John Sibelius, author of the patriotic Finlandia Symphony, completed in 1899. They appear exhausted after an intensive evening of drink and discussion. Happily, all four men lived to see their mission successful. National Romanticism unfolded differently and for diverse reasons in Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden. How, you might wonder? Check out my other National Romanticism videos. And if you enjoyed this content, please hit the thumbs up button. And if you'd like to keep current with new videos and support this project, please subscribe to my channel. You can leave comments and questions in the section below and check out my website, www.michellefakos.com, for related articles, books, lectures, and blog posts. What would you like to learn about Nordic art?